these people far more dangerous than a brutal clean thug, is that they kind of want to negotiate their position. They're only really concerned, they're only feeling for themselves.
Right.
They have a camaraderie with others often that is based on something that is not really loving caring, but it's more kind of competitive or fun-seeking, as probably is the case in this one, where the child has actually become an
to an end in the most brutal of circumstances, let down by social services, doctors, health chiefs, health services, I should say, I'm sorry, and even police officers. Sarah in Watford. What do you say, Sarah? Good morning.
Good morning. I've got a 1-year-old. He's learning
Of course, yes, yeah.
so we Friday evening, and he was toddling around, and he lost his balance and fell, and hit his mouth on the TV. Too much blood, more than I could use. Like the
Mouths
preachers,
do bleed, don't they? They
yeah.
has voted against the introduction of mandatory COVID passes in some venues in England, but the measure passed with Labour support. One of the rebels, Sir Christopher Chope, has told LBC the Prime Minister needs to come back refreshed in the new year.
I would be looking to see what we thought was Boris's new blood, which was a conviction politician who believed in freedom and individual responsibility, and somebody who actually believed in a smaller state rather than a larger one, lower taxes rather than higher taxes, and so on.
Omicron is expected to be the dominant coronavirus variant across the EU by mid-January. The European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen says the bloc is well prepared to fight the strain, with 66% of Europe fully vaccinated. A man has been arrested on suspicion of murder and arson after a person died in a fire in a block of flats in Reading. Emergency services were called out in the early hours of this morning. A number of people are still unaccounted for. Ollie Cyril is a local journalist in the area.
A few people have told me that they heard screams coming from the affected flats, which are now completely charred. Firefighters are still currently at the flats. We can still see smoke coming from the area, but we can see scaffolding on the roof. Tunnels are being removed to make the area safe.
Labour says the latest inflation figures are a stark illustration of the cost of living crisis facing families this Christmas. The Consumer Prices Index rose to 5.1% in November, the highest in a decade and more than double the Bank of England's target. Chancellor Rishi Sunak says the government is spending £4.2 billion to support living standards. Currys says it's seen slower sales at its stores in the run-up to Christmas. The electricals retailer has warned the emergence of the Omicron variant has left the future looking uncertain. Sales fell 4% to £2.5 billion between May and October, compared with the same period a year ago. In the city a short time ago, the FTSE 100 was trading down 33 points at 71.85, and the pound buys $1.32 at €1.17. LBC weather, many parts cloudy and mild, but some sunshine in the north and east, some rain for parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland and the northwest of England, and a high of 12 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Simon Conway.
Yes, the best excuse is Christmas. It's the excuse of the year. To get glammed up with must-have makeup, that's the Christmas cheer.
It's the very best excuse to get glammed up. Shop the beauty brands you love, like Benefit and Elemis at Very. Online or on the app, with a choice of ways to pay. Christmas is this very moment.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with James O'Brien.
Good morning, it's 3 minutes after 10 and you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Shall we begin with a quick apology? Always good to begin with apologies. A gentleman rang in yesterday who I believe had a background in catering, and I mocked the suggestion that they may have employed professional caterers for the parties being held at number 10 Downing Street. And while no pictures have yet emerged of professional caterers apparently being employed for the illegal parties at number 10 Downing Street, we do now have evidence of bain-marie. When you're speaking French, do you pronounce the S on the plurals? Is it bain-marie or bain-maries? Anyway, big sort of heated trays full of grub, which I don't think you've got them knocking about in the cupboard under the kettle, have you? But to a Conservative Party HQ, it looks to me as if the plate of canapes was very carefully arranged. It looks like a sort of medieval sundial or something like that. So you've got carefully arranged canapes plus bain-maries equals professional caterers. I know it's pronounced canapes, canapé. But when you have been a professional gossip columnist and lived for 18 months on little more than canapes and indeed canapes, then you're allowed at this point. the front, hands raised. Admittedly, there'd be fewer glasses of wine in your average primary school football team, but hands raised, toasts given, and precisely no word I can't say on the radio given at all. 7 minutes after 10. So that's got you going, I think, unless you're really pretending, unless you're tugging so hard on your forelock this morning that your eyes are watering. You've got to be hacked off that these characters were throwing parties when the rest of us weren't even allowed to see our mums or attend the funerals of our grandparents. But something really weird is happening, and I don't know whether you've clocked it yet. It's the weakness of Boris Johnson. I enjoyed one political journalist yesterday, one of Murdoch's little minions, tweeting that I'm told that the support for the rebellion is hemorrhaging, and then it came in as being even higher than anybody, even the leaders of the so-called rebellion had been expecting. But hey ho, I don't think that accuracy or standards are much of a criteria for being one of Rupert Murdoch's minions. It's all about doing whatever it is that Rupert Murdoch wants you to do. So yesterday, obviously, the message was, let's try and undermine let's make it look like the rebellion's not going to be that big. And there it was, over 100, second biggest Conservative Party parliamentary rebellion in the history of Parliament, I think, never mind in the history of this one. So that's really, really weird. And I just want to pick over this and then invite you to talk to me. We'll have a little thinking today rather than necessarily a debate, because something quite strange is going on, and I at the moment don't know whether to make head nor tail of it. Let me first up make it clear that the single most important issue regarding Boris Johnson's hemorrhaging of influence and support in the Conservative Party is the fact that it potentially throws into complete disarray a book I'm due to start writing at the beginning of next year. So on a purely self-interested level, please keep him there until the next general election. Otherwise I'm going to have to go back to the drawing board, and you know how much I hate drawing boards. But I do concede that that may not be the most significant element of this whole saga for everybody. So this is why it's weird. So there are two things undermining Boris Johnson at the moment. There are two things diluting his influence, desolidifying his support. One is the perception of, well, let's just call it parties. Just all of these parties that they were throwing left, right and centre.
There's congestion ahead.
Not, and the rest of us ran the very real risk of arrest and prosecution. It merits saying this again and again and again, doesn't it? The Met still aren't investigating anything, but if you had done back in December of last year what Boris Johnson and his mates did, you would have run a very real risk of arrest and prosecution. In fact, you quite possibly would only be appearing in front of magistrates now to receive your £200 fine for breaches of lockdown. That's a given. If you are pretending that's not a big deal, then I've got a bridge I want to send you. It is incredible to think of the effort that has to be put into sustaining support for somebody who not only rode roughshod over the rules that they introduced and demanded that you obey, but then presided over a cabal that laughed about it 4 days later. That's just incredible. I think the days of trying to come up with excuses or giving the benefit of the doubt to people are now behind us. And remember, this hasn't gone away. But the second element that's undermining Boris Johnson is this so-called rebellion. Brexit hardman Steve Baker and his fellow quarter wits marching through the lobby yesterday, accompanied by a right old ragtag bunch of Tories. Some of them, I'm pretty sure, if the vote had looked like being close, I'm pretty sure they would have voted the other way. Some of them saw it, what you might see as the Theresa May old guard, just saw it as an opportunity to slip a quick punch under the ribcage of Boris Johnson. So the bigger the rebellion, the bigger the rebellion, the bigger the problem for the Prime Minister. Some people, I think, voted yesterday just to increase the size of the Prime Ministerial problem. Some people voted because they think that the wearing of masks and having to produce a vaccine certificate to go into nightclubs is an assault upon the liberty of British people, whereas, outlawing peaceful protest and making it easier to deport British people, that's not an assault upon the liberties and freedom of British people. Abolishing freedom of movement, that's not an assault, but having to wear a mask and produce a COVID certificate. Big assault on freedom, big, huge, massive threat to liberty. So they're clearly not very clever or honest, but they have a vote and they march through the lobby. Alongside them went a bunch of people. There's sort of 3 or 4 separate groups, some of whom I think were motivated by increasing the size of the problem, and some of them were motivated by the same weird combination of arrogance and ignorance that led them to be key players in the Brexit saga as well. But they're against public opinion. So this is where it gets really interesting for me. That you have a sort of Scylla and Charybdis of political damage threatening to crush Boris Johnson's ship as it makes its way through the Straits, but they are almost diametrically, even arguably ideologically opposed to each other. His support in Parliament is being undermined by his support for something that's publicly popular. So the public support for COVID measures has remained robust and strong throughout this saga. Most of the public are comfortable with face masks. Most of the public are comfortable with COVID certifications. Most of the public would be comfortable seeing more restrictions brought in. You can have your little quibbles and arguments about opinion polling, just have them somewhere else. You know, this is the pitch upon which we play. So on the one side, the Scylla, if you like, you've got the fact that Boris Johnson's under attack from his own MPs for doing something for once that is popular with the electorate. 03456060973 is the number you need if you want to join in. But then on the other side, you've got Boris Johnson's popularity with the electorate coming under now almost daily attack by evidence of the contempt in which he and his closest associates held the rules that they had imposed on the rest of us. So what question do I ask you this morning? I think I've got two, and whether or not we split them up into 2 separate hours, or whether or not we try and sort of water ski with 1 foot on each for the duration is entirely up to you. The key question is, do you think he's toast now? Do you think he's done for? Do you personally think he's done for? And in many ways, people like me aren't really part of this conversation because I run that risk of seeing what I want to see. I'm in, once again, the very unhappy position of having predicted and described exactly the disasters that are now befalling the country through the relatively simple premise of having taken some time to both observe and understand Boris Johnson. So it was always going to end like this. It was always going to end with people absolutely reeling in shock at the sheer extent of his incompetence, never mind his dishonesty. It could not end otherwise. It's a bit like having a phone in about whether anyone's surprised to find out that the leopards in London Zoo have got spots. Do not text me to tell me that there aren't any leopards in London Zoo. All right, it's a figure of speech. So, and there's no pleasure, there's no Schadenfreude in being proven right about the damage that's been sustained to one's own country, whether it's Brexit or Boris Johnson. There's no pleasure whatsoever in being proved incontrovertibly and irrefutably right about both disasters, because it's too late now. They've been done. God knows how long it's going to take to undo the damage that Boris Johnson's premiership has done. Well, some of that damage, some of those deaths can never be undone. They can never be reversed. But the generational damage of having a parliamentary Conservative Party full of people who don't believe you have to understand something to have a strong opinion about it, that's something that's going to be plaguing this nation for possibly decades, certainly years to come. So no pleasure whatsoever in that, and it may not be yet. It may not be that the 1,000th cut of the death by 1,000 cuts has yet been applied. But it has to end eventually with a revelation. Well, I say that, and then you look at Donald Trump, which we'll talk about later. It has to end with people just going, well, I'm not putting up with this any longer. He's laughing at me, and his relationship with the truth is absolutely non-existent. So question number 1, do you think he's done for now? Is there a hole below the waterline, whether it's massive or whether it's a tiny fracture? The water is now being let in, and the great ship Boris Johnson is destined now to sink. Hit the numbers now, you will get through. Tell me why you think that. 03456060973 is the number you need. And then the second question is a slightly different one. Whether or not the continuing evidence of these parties, and part of your answer to the first question is going to include reference to the parties, but is Boris Johnson done for, and how much damage are these parties doing? Partly to your opinion about him and his leadership, but also what worries me this morning more so than it has done previously, is the simple question of whether or not people consciously and subconsciously are now going to be blasé about the rules. There's going to be a sort of subconscious. Touched on this last week because someone I quite like said, well, why should we bother obeying the rules? Because they don't. To which my answer was, because you care about your neighbours, you care about your colleagues, you care about your family members. This lot don't care about anyone. It's a behavioural osmosis that comes from the top. So, two questions. Is Boris Johnson done for? 03456060973. Is this the beginning of the end? And how much harm are these parties actually doing to you and to yours? Hit the numbers now. You will get through. It's 10:18.
This is LBC.
We've got a barn load of deals at Morrison's this Christmas, like any 3 for £18 on wine. Choose from 19 Crimes Red, Menestrello Prosecco and loads more. In-store and online now. Morrison's. Make good things happen. Majority of stores and online, subject to availability. 75 centilitres, £7.50 to £11 each. Exclude Scotland. Please drink responsibly.
Let's get together again to share a smooth dram with friends and enjoy the full flavour of every moment. It's been too long. Drop by for a Bell's. Please drink responsibly.
I tried to discover something different to get my sister. Maybe a necklace that's not just run of the mill. Go shop small, please.
Let's go shop small this festive season with American Express. Eligible cards, enrollment required, terms apply.
It was just another day in another week for Jenny. But as she listened to the radio, she was suddenly filled with an urge to escape. So Jenny pressed the green button and flew to Ireland's wild Atlantic way. She met the friendly locals of Cork's famous English market, indulged in the delicious fresh seafood of Galway, and explored the dramatic coastlines and picturesque landscapes of Donegal. Press the green button and fly to Ireland's wild Atlantic way this winter. Just over an hour from London's Stansted Airport.
I run a bike shop. I've been bringing in stock from the EU for years, and next year I want to be doing the same. The rules might be changing, but my business isn't. Before, you could delay your customs declarations, but from the 1st of January, you can't. You've got to do it when the goods enter the country. So I'm starting right now. To keep your business moving, visit gov.uk/import goods into UK.
Leading Britain's conversation. LBC with James O'Brien.
20 minutes after 10 is the time. Mark says, I think the parties are the cheese straws that broke the camel's back. Well played, Mark. And Danny says, I would have said yes, he's done for, but it's like the end of Terminator 2, James, when any single shot should have ended him, but he just keeps coming back and back and back. So, no, nothing would surprise me now. I have some sympathy with that position. I said earlier to the producer that I think he's holed below the waterline, which is, you know, synonymous historically with being done for, just a question of when, not if. But if any politician in recent history is capable of fixing a hole below the waterline with the usual bluster and faux bonhomie, it's probably Boris Johnson. So we'll focus on that question first, I think. 03456060973. Is this the beginning of the end? Bearing in mind that the two forces applying the most pressure on him are actually opposed to each other. Alistair's in Chelmsford. Alistair, what would you like to say?
Yeah, sorry. Morning, James.
Hello.
First time caller. I do love your show.
Thank you.
Yeah, he's toast. He's utterly toast now. I regretfully, I voted for Johnson. The biggest mistake of my life.
I pause you there, because what else could you have done? I mean, I didn't, but equally, the Labour Party's failure to provide a feasible choice or an even half electable alternative that's not your fault.
But, I mean, my brother said to me, whatever you do, vote Corbyn. Right. And I run my own business, and obviously the media scare stories about what would happen, everything like that. You know, most people have a young family, run my own business, don't have time to read through all the papers every day.
Of course.
Bits like that. And, yeah, I mean...
So you weren't a dyed-in-the-wool supporter of Boris Johnson, then? You just kind of went with the flow, as it were?
went with the gut instinct what I thought would be the best of a bad situation. I mean, now I'm actually interested. Lockdowns have given me a chance to read up, see what's going on, and it's just horrifying. And I think the by-election on Thursday will just confirm a lot of people have woken up to it.
Maybe not. Doesn't always work like that. And you've got again that historical problem of Labour and Lib Dem vying for the seat again, so a split opposition, if you like, against a united Conservative vote. What was when? The two questions for you: when did the rot set in? When did you begin to think aye? And when did it stop? When did you conclude
the whole situation with COVID has shown him to be absolutely, he's just useless. And this Christmas parties, which have all come to light recently, I always have my suspicions. I've friends that work in the city, and they would say to me, "Oh, do you think he's going to be abiding by these rules?"
Yeah.
And then you think it all comes out now. But it's just, I think.
So the shambolic handling of the coronavirus in general, mitigated briefly perhaps by the early success of the vaccine rollout. It's important to remember that they did, possibly by accident, but they did get that right. But then what it tells you about the honesty, integrity and morality of Downing Street, of Boris Johnson's Downing Street, what the parties tell you about that is the cheese straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah, I think a lot of people as well, like myself, I mean, my family and I haven't been away on holiday for a couple of years. You've seen Boris Johnson getting holidays to make villas in the private jets, the full work. The corruption of this, you had the gent working in catering laughing, and you said, do you think they won't be private catering doing that event?
Yeah, all right. Nobody's perfect, mate. You know,
and I've
written a book. I'm not totally wrong, okay? I always own my mistakes. I didn't think they'd be stupid enough to have professional caterers at the party.
The scale of the corruption. I mean, my former MP, Brooks Newmark, got a £180 million PPE deal. And he's in pet food business with somebody.
Yes, again, no evidence whatsoever of corruption and or law breaking, but I can let you have cronyism for free.
Yeah, I mean, the scale of it now, and I've only started, I never had time for politics in the sense of just, I'm a normal busy person, I don't tend to be perfect or anything, but now my attention is very much drawn about what's going on. I will look at any information that I find, I'll listen to every end of the argument, and I'm on different spectrums to you, James, with a lot of things, but I like your show because I listen to a lot of people that come on with different opinions.
But on this one, we are almost all agreed now that just because you're taking the mickey out of me, so I don't care where you sit politically, I don't care what you think about X, Y or Z or even B, but you feel now that they're taking the mickey out of me, and I'm not putting up with that anymore.
Yeah, and the level of it, when these MPs now, they haven't had their income impacted, they haven't had businesses destroyed, you know, they haven't lived by the same restrictions, they've been holidaying all abroad, they're probably all going on their ski trips this next week. It'll be lovely to see who's off to Switzerland, France and so on.
Again, not breaking the rules, but that idea that they should have their shoulders to the wheel, and this might be one of the things we disagree on, but I do see all of the allegations you're levelling being much more so about the conduct of the Conservative Party than the other lot. I worry that one get out of jail free card for these people is the idea that all politicians are as bad as each other, which I don't think the evidence supports on this occasion. But that's good to hear, Alistair, and thank you for the kind words about the show. Stick with me, and eventually you will agree with me about everything. That's generally how it works. It's only 5 minutes after 10. Keith is shaking his head furiously. Paul is in mould. Paul, what would you like to say?
Well, I hope that it would be toast, but unfortunately the bloke's Teflon, isn't he? Nothing seems to stick to him. You just have to look at all the other failings before this in the last couple of years. You've got the Irish border, Grenfell Tower, promises about the NHS.
Grenfell wasn't on his watch, although he did make the bloke who put the bloke who called all of the dead people victims of their own lack of common sense. He did make him leader of the House and send him off to lie to the Queen. But I think the Brexit blindfold's been taken off now. So up until Owen Paterson, they could just shout Brexit at everything, and a certain portion of the population would just go along with it for emotional or sentimental reasons. That's why I wonder whether the last couple of weeks are different from what's gone before. But you don't think so?
No, I mean, I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful because you've got to have hope. Because what else could you got at the moment? But yeah, this whole Christmas party thing. You know, I've got people in my family, not me directly, but in-laws who've lost relatives to COVID last year. People who didn't see them for their last Christmas, if you like. I suffer from anxiety and mental health issues, and I'm not saying my experience is any worse than anybody else's, but you know, being locked down and following the rules for the last couple of years has had its massive toll on that for me personally.
egregious breaches of rules, and certainly if I was in charge of people that have broken the rules that egregiously, I'd expect to be being shown the door fairly quickly. Well, only time will tell. My feeling is that the curious combination of the scale of the latest rebellion and the public unhappiness with the party revelations will combine to create a new dynamic. But yeah, I mean, if anybody knows how desperately people cling to the carcass of Boris Johnson's reputation, despite all the evidence to the contrary, is me sitting in this chair as a London-based radio presenter when he was Mayor of London. And remember, I fell for it the first time round. It took me about 2 months to see the error of my ways, but I don't get to sit in judgment on people who need a little bit longer to see the error of theirs. A couple of phone lines free now. If you want to grab the one that Paul is vacating, you can do so by dialing 03456060973. We haven't talked much about Sean Bailey specifically, but this idea, what I have chosen to describe as a form of behavioural osmosis, if the message coming down from on high is that the rules are for the little people, then you can hardly be surprised when everybody close to that power begins to see the rules in exactly the same way. But the culmination in this particular case is genuinely breathtaking. I've said it before and I'll say it again. It's the point at which somebody in the room went, "Hey folks, let's have a photo." And nobody went, "No, really, let's not, because we're actually breaking the law. Probably. Let's have a photo." Billionaire property developer and Conservative Party diners is a great idea. Raises his glass of wine in there. That's the bit where I think I'm a little bit reluctant to use phrases like ordinary people or folk, because they're normally misused by some very bad actors. But that's, I mean, we are ordinary people insofar as we weren't at parties like that in Conservative Party headquarters or indeed Downing Street last Christmas. But the point of, I mean, surely, so that's the bit that we don't get, right? The bit where have you booked the caterers, Tristram? Yeah, I've booked the caterers. Have you got the party house, Jemima? Yeah, I've got the party house. Got the Secret Santa under control, Keith? Hang on, I'm not meant to be at this party. I'm James O'Brien's tickle. It's 10:30. Thomas Watts is here with the headlines.
Boris Johnson will face the Commons later following a huge Conservative revolt over his coronavirus plans. The Prime Minister's under growing leadership pressure after nearly 100 Tory MPs voted against mandatory COVID passes in England. One person has died and a number of others are unaccounted for after a fire at a block of flats in Reading. The 31-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of murder and arson. Figures show there was another sharp rise in UK inflation last month to the highest rate in more than a decade. The cost of living surged by 5.1% in the 12 months to November, up from 4.2% the month before. LBC weather, many parts cloudy and mild, some sunshine in the north and east, but rain in parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland and the northwest of England, a high of 12 degrees.
This is LBC. Let's get together again to share a smooth dram with friends and enjoy the full flavour of every moment. It's been too long. Drop by for a bells. Please drink responsibly.
I run a bike shop. I've been bringing in stock from the EU for years, and next year I want to be doing the same. The rules might be changing, but my business isn't. Before, you could delay your customs declarations, but from the 1st of January, you can't. You've got to do it when the goods enter the country. So I'm starting right now. To keep your business moving, visit gov.uk/import goods into UK.
We've loads of deals worth harvesting this Christmas at Morrison's, like whole salmon, $4.99 a kilo, and a British beef joint, $5.99 a kilo. Morrison's, make good things happen. Majority of stores subject to availability. Online varies. Beef vacuum packed. Ends 26th of December.
Experience one of those rare moments where you find everything you need and everything you desire. The new all-electric BMW range brings you the performance and handling you expect with all the
8:10 is the time. It's not all bad news. Liz Truss has just wished everyone in the UK and around the world a Merry Christmas. So, you know, every cloud. And speaking of silver linings, we'll be joined in about an hour, just under an hour, by Tom Kerridge, one of the coolest dudes in town, who has hooked up with one of the stars of 2021, Marcus Rashford, to make a Christmas lunch, a good slap-up feed with all the trimmings available to people who would not otherwise be able to afford it. Just a cracking idea. And we'll also talk to Tom about the impact on the hospitality industry that the current round of advice rather than regulations is wreaking. I mean, the key difference, as I see it, obviously, and I reserve the right to be wrong, the key difference between regulations and advice is that if it's a regulation, there's compensation. If it's advice, there isn't. So you can advise us all not to mingle much, so we all cancel our Christmas lunches, and there's no compensation for the restaurants because they're not required to close and we're not required to cancel our Christmas lunches. So Tom this morning on Twitter had a kind of live action feed of his reservations book, which, you know, hundreds of people cancelling, which he is one of the best chefs in the land, best restaurateurs in the country. He could probably weather this storm, as he concedes himself, but there'll be a hell of a lot of hospitality venues that will not be able to, and I think that's key. And you know, not to take anything away from the success of the furlough scheme and the fact that the financial compensation for people whose businesses were hobbled and nobbled was pretty good in the main, albeit 3 million who were completely abandoned appear now to have been completely forgotten. But this time around, what's the difference between advice and rules? Well, if it's a rule, you get compensation, you get support from the government. If it's advice, you don't. That's why they love common sense so much. If it's common sense, then your business can go bust without you getting any help whatsoever from the government. But if it's a rule imposed by the people in charge of running the country, then there'd be some sort of financial compensation. And given the way these ghouls talk about tax cuts, even against the backdrop of what we've just endured, there aren't any prizes for guessing where the ideological motivation for not offering support to British businesses might be coming from. 10:36 is the time. Claire is in Doncaster. Claire, what made you become?
Well, I voted Conservative for the first time ever. I wasn't previously a voter, if I'm honest, but I voted for him. And I feel like a fool. I've got 4 teenage sons, 2 at secondary school, 2 at university. They don't want to do lateral flow tests, they don't want to get vaccines, they think it's all because if boys can go out partying, then why shouldn't they?
Is that the equation? Is it that simple? That they've looked at the events of the last few weeks? Because there's an awful lot of, or there could be an awful lot of weight on the other side of the scales, not least the death toll and the hospitalisation rates and the obvious success of the vaccine. So, I mean, it shouldn't be a complete no-brainer, should it? That just because Boris Johnson had a party, your lads are going to put themselves and indeed you at risk.
Yeah, I know, but their attitude is, well, they can't be taking it that seriously, this COVID thing, if they can do what they're doing. So I find it hard to argue back against them.
Oh, so would I think. I do it for a living. So the proper weirdos who've been claiming it's a hoax or it's all exaggerated because they want to take over the world or something like that, your boys are thinking, well, maybe there's something in that, because the only explanation they can come up with for the rule breaking is that it's not as serious as they're telling us it was.
Yeah.
I get it now. Well, then you need to tell them, and this is why you feel silly for voting for him, because you need to tell him that Boris Johnson's utter unfitness for office and his absolute contempt for the truth has been clear since he was in short trousers. Well, show them the letter from the housemaster. It might not make any difference, but if you show them the Eton housemaster saying, this is a man who doesn't think the rules should apply to him, this is a man who seems to think that being required to observe the same rules that everybody else or the same